Hello, my lovely bags of chromosomes. Do you enjoy listening to stories about me suffering? Of course you do. So I have another story right here for you. So 4 years ago, I was flying to Japan and this massive storm comes straight out of frickin' Narnia and forced our plane to change direction, resulting in a hell of a lot of problems for me. I ended up getting stranded in China. And there are no subscribe buttons in China because YouTube is blocked there. And you can't use that without an illegal VPN. So you should celebrate the existence of the subscribe button by pressing it, as it makes it very happy. Anyways, getting to the story, I had been living in America for about 8 months after returning from my year studying abroad in Japan. I was pretty set on returning as soon as I graduated and worked hard to land a job while living in the States. So at the end of March, I got on my plane and headed to Japan. The plan was that my company was to meet me at the airport and then they would take me to my hotel and we would begin training the next day. But that didn't happen. We were supposed to make a pit stop at Guangzhou, or however you're supposed to say it, but this massive storm came and shook the plane to the point where many people were getting sick on the plane, including myself. Since I have chronic vertigo, I was one of the first to get dizzy, but luckily I didn't throw up. I remember hearing the speakers turning on with the staff asking if there's any doctors flying on the plane. Please help us. We need your help. And I remember thinking that the plane was going to crash because it was shaking so freaking hard that it felt like we were going over speed bumps at like extremely high speeds. And honestly, I thought that was it. And that made me very upset because my greatest fear in life was that I would work so hard towards a goal or a dream, and then I would die right before I achieved that goal. And it felt like that exact thing was what was happening. So the pilots, they eventually gave up and turned the plane 180 degrees around and took us to another location. Once the plane landed, we stayed inside the airplane for about 2 hours. So I was freaking out because I was at the wrong airport and I missed my layover. So I pulled out my phone hoping that I could get a signal, as I had an international plan that allowed me to use my phone in many countries at no extra cost. And while Japan was one of those countries, China was not. So I'm just sitting on the plane thinking I was screwed. I was at the wrong airport in the wrong country with no way to contact my company to explain what happened until I could get on Wi-Fi. Eventually, they let us off the airplane and my layover at the other airport has already left, so I grabbed my stuff and head through the most brutal customs check of my life. Now, this was my second time in China, with the first being an absolute terrible experience. I remember the last time I left the airport and saw a woman chase down a chicken and then slit its throat right outside the airport. Oh, I already knew I was not in for a fun time. Anyways, the lady at customs starts asking me a bunch of questions like, what brings you to China? How long are you staying here? And the questions became progressively more specific and personal, and I was starting to get very frustrated. Eventually, I got really rude with her and told her that I didn't want to be in this fucking country, and that the pilot took me to the wrong airport, and now I have to figure out another way to get to Japan. She looked at me very upset, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I insulted the country, which is a very, very illegal thing to do, and they could have arrested me for saying what I just did. So I am extremely lucky, again I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm extremely lucky that she chose to look the other way and stamped me with a 2-day visa for China while they booked another flight for me. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me have my checked-in luggage. They said that they're going to move it to the next airplane that they schedule for me. So with that, I was in China for 2 days without most of my luggage, and of course my first order of action was to get Wi-Fi so I can contact my company. Even at the airport, Wi-Fi was really hard to find, but eventually I found free Wi-Fi, and I was so happy until China punched me in the balls. Wow, that's a reoccurring theme here, by the way. Turns out, you have to have a Chinese phone number to get on public Wi-Fi, which of course I didn't have. So I had no choice but to find a Chinese person who was willing to let me tether off their phone. Now that alone had a ton of problems, the biggest being the language barrier. I had no translator on me and spoke zero Chinese. So I had to find someone who spoke either English or Japanese at a high enough level that I can communicate what I was trying to do. I walked around the airport talking to many Chinese people, but no one understood me and either gave me a very frustrated look or they walked away. I really didn't know what to do at this point, but I really didn't have any other choice but to continue to ask people, so that's exactly what I did. Finally, I found someone who was willing to let me tether off their phone, and I thanked them and immediately pulled up Gmail so I could send my company an email. And that's when I learned about the Great Firewall of China. Gmail is blocked in China, so I couldn't send my company a friggin' email. So I tried to get on Facebook to get the info to a friend who could email the company for me, and found out Facebook is blocked. I tried YouTube and Twitter next, only to find out that they were blocked too. Literally every form of communication and social media that I had and knew my friends and family had was blocked in China. So I had zero way of contacting the friggin' outside world, and as far as everyone knows, I got on a plane and fell off the face of the earth. Finally, I tried the default iMessage on my phone and messaged the only guy I know who is never sleeping at night, and sure enough, it got through to him by some friggin' miracle. I was able to give him an email and the info and explain what happened to him, and he was able to contact my company and let them know. So I probably should have told him to contact my family as well, because they ended up freaking out, but I didn't think about that at the time. I was just thinking mostly about my company. So again, I thank the guy who let me tether once more and head to the airport staff to explain that I'm stranded in China, and they made some arrangements for the 2 days at a hotel that I could stay at for free, and I would get 2 free meals a day while at the hotel. I was relieved since I didn't have to exchange any currency there, and I didn't have to spend any extra money. So the bus arrives and they take us to the hotel. As we are driving there, I couldn't help but notice that the area around me was progressively becoming more and more third world. I'm talking about like all the buildings were friggin' run down with holes in the walls and the roofs. The roads were extraordinarily damaged, and the people were wearing like really old and worn out clothes with holes in them. Eventually, we arrive at this hotel that looks straight up 5 friggin' stars. To this day, that was the best and nicest hotel that I've ever stayed at in my entire life. But the area surrounding the hotel looks straight up like a friggin' post-war zone, third world area. Now, initially, since I had 2 days to kill, I was going to go out and explore. But after the bus ride and seeing the area around the hotel, I decided that it's safest to just stay in the hotel. After going in, I got my hotel room and Wi-Fi password, but the Wi-Fi was so weak that it would only reach my room for about 5 minutes every few hours after midnight. During the day, there was zero Wi-Fi. So I remember looking out my hotel room and I saw 2 men working in a shed, fixing up a car while wearing really torn up clothes. And yeah, I was very terrified to go outside. I remember thinking that I would get jumped and wake up in a bathtub full of ice, missing an organ or two. So then came mealtime and I was presented this beef bowl thing. And I remembered that China's food regulation standards are literally non-existent. And I had no idea if this meal was going to make me sick or not. But honestly, after thinking about all the hell I went through, I was starving. So I risked it, and I luckily didn't get sick, so I guess that was that. I went back to my hotel room and slept until around 2 a.m. and woke up and saw that I can connect to Wi-Fi. So I messaged my sister, since she was the only other person I knew with an iPhone, and found out that everyone was freaking out about my vanishing and started those prayer circles that I mentioned earlier. So I explained all the crazy hell that I went through that day, and that I had my trip delayed because I was stuck in the wrong country. After that, though, things went pretty smoothly. Actually, no, that's a freaking lie. But I stayed in my boring hotel room until my flight and was ready to go back to the airport. I got on the plane and then I flew to Japan. So I thought the worst was over, but China was like, "Bitch, you thought." So I get off the plane in Japan and go to the checked baggage area to get my stuff. I remember waiting a really, really long time without seeing my bags. Eventually, a staff lady comes out with this big car with my name on it, and at this point, I knew what was about to happen. I go to her, and she tells me that my luggage got lost in China. So, of course, I was like, damn, I'm the luckiest guy alive. She said that they would try to find it and send it to me, and they'll call me when it arrives at the airport. And I had zero confidence that I would ever see my luggage, but it actually did arrive at the airport a few days later, and I could get it. So I guess that's one alright thing that's happened. But for now, I find myself walking towards the gate, just really pissed off after going through all of that and then losing my luggage. And I thought that things couldn't possibly get any worse, but I was wrong. Out of nowhere, a cop comes over to me and pulls out their badge. And apparently I was chosen for a special inspection. So they go through what little luggage I had and asked me a ton of questions about why I was in Japan. So I just wasn't having it at this point. So I told him that I was there to bang his women. And around that time, my company found me and actually was able to pull me away from the cop. So them being there actually kind of gave me some relief, since that means that my friend was able to relay the info about my delay. And after all that BS, I just wanted to go back into my hotel room and rest. But my company was like, alright, it's time to take you to your training. And I'm going to leave it off at that. I was so pissed that my company took me straight to training, but that's another story for another day. And yeah, the screwing continued heavily and got worse actually. But I'll cover that in a different video. So, what do you think about that wild journey? Let me know in the comments and push like if you have eyes. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.